And now David Bulavrishvili he is the data exchange he represents the data exchange agency, the Ministry of Justice of Georgia, and he will talk about the implementation of information security policy in Georgia in general. Good morning. Good morning once again. Thank you very much, Mr. Georgi, for his very interesting question. And my presentation deals with the information security. And I'll continue Mr. David's question, whether we can feel secure or not, and whether we can achieve the absolute information security. The short answer to this question is no. What's the intermediary answer? Yes, we feel that we are secure. And what does it mean? What does information security mean? Do you know what information means? Do you know what it means? Do you know the definition of the security of information? Because it's very difficult to answer this question, and it's very difficult to store this information. We can categorize information. We can have different categories of information. And when I talk about it, I generate information. But it's impossible to store this information without permanent monitoring of this information. So I begin, and what information is? Information might be generated, information might be stored, information might be destroyed. There are different types of information, and there is a list of activities and types of information on the slide. First of all,
of course, in the beginning, we're creating the information, that we're processing that, then we may send it to somebody or may destroy it. Somebody may steal the information, may have unsanctioned access to the information, or send this information by mistake, by email to somebody. The information may be corrupted, and therefore, these are the types of information. Of course, the list is not exhaustive. There are numerous types of information. Any type of information can be, for example, printed information, written information, information written by pen or by pencil. This does not change the content of information. Information can be saved electronically. This is the most widespread processing of information. We may deliver information by post, by email. We may reflect information in videos. The information that I'm displaying on the screen and conveying to you is also a type of information. But the content of information does not change because of the type of information. Information is always an information and always requires protection. Therefore, a human being who says that he is protected raises two questions for me. First, that individual does not understand very well what it means to be safe and secured, and second option is that he knows very well how to protect the information and has best practice in his organization. Sources of threat can be diverse. and I'll focus only on the number of the threats. First, social engineering. Social engineering is the most widely spread threats today, and it may involve getting information from the individual by deceiving people. In the past, I was seeing quite frequently when a friend is sending you certain address on the web and tells you that there is interesting information here. When you enter the link, you are requested to enter ID and password. You think that you are on the Facebook page again, and you are writing your ID and password, and by doing this, the individual who created that site, which looks like Facebook, is stealing your ID and password. This is the most widely spread example of stealing information in social engineering. Viruses destroying information. Backdoors is another form of stealing. It's number 4 from the top. I was very surprised when I heard that quite many programmers try to have backdoors in computer softwares, of course, covertly, hiddenly from their bosses. This is quite a big risk, by the way. Backdoors. This is examples of what can happen to our information. You see fire, flooding, earthquake. Can it damage our information? Yes, of course. If it is in a physical carrier, yes. Usually it is on a physical carrier. It is either on our brain or a disk or a paper that can be damaged. So information is not stored only in electronic storage devices, and storage of information is something to be tackled by the organization. Who shall bear responsibility for the assets, for the safety of assets? The question arises. More than 70% of threats are internal, which Georgians say that the prison is broken from inside. More than 60% culprits are first-time frauders. So actually, as always, people do this. And because of human mistakes, safety of information can be infringed upon. The biggest risk, as well as the biggest asset, is people, are people, and this is true. Social engineering is the major threat. And one of the studies have found that more than 2/3 out of the 27,000 surveyed individuals cannot answer the question if their systems are currently corrupted. Therefore, how do we overcome these issues? The reality is quite difficult, to put it simply. As a rule, new managers make mistakes. The first mistake they make is that they think it is an IT problem, and usually they task the IT department heads with the responsibility to protect data. This is not correct at all. The information safety and security problems can be addressed only with the active participation of the company leadership, leading managers. How can we take care of information security? It's a very important question, and I'd like to describe one of the best practices to you. First, I'll go to one. I'll tell you one story. So far, the National Security Council had two departments, and now the Ministry of another department for data protection emerged. And Information Exchange Agency has assumed the functions that were not covered previously. This green is the sector on which the Information Exchange Agency was created. It was created in 2010, subordinated to the Ministry of Justice, and the information security policy is implemented by two sub-departments. The first is a security and policy department, and third, GovG, the so-called computer emergency response team. So we have thought a lot about this issue, and we decided that we needed a law that would oblige important organizations to put in place minimum security mechanisms for the information security. Now a legal entity or state agency whose continuous operations are important for the functioning of the state and for the normal functioning of the society. These organizations shall put in place minimum protection standards. We participate in the cyber security strategy. So everything that starts with the word cyber has something to do with computers, but this is not only cyber security strategies. This is the country's information security strategy, and within the scopes of this strategy we carry out numerous activities. Now, what we've done in the country, we have good progress. The president has approved the list of critical information subjects. Now we have 39 organizations. Last year we had 36. These 39 organizations are obliged to implement this law in their organization and to put in place information security. Minimum requirements to the information security is a huge document. This is one of the normative acts, bylaws, which requires a certain level of minimum protection for different organizations. And several requirements shown on this slide. However, real number of requirements is more. So the organization has to develop information security document. So this is a document which reflects the vision of the organization on how the information has to be protected. So this vision actually says that I want my information has to be protected, and I want it to be protected this and that way, and This shall not be an alienated, isolated document, not linked to the goals of the organization. So if it's a business process, they may imply the outcomes of the business process. Secondly, management of information assets has to be in place. It means that organizations shall have the systems to register assets. There shall be the manager of information security, and in an English version, we have the term information security officer, so we call an individual responsible for these measures information security manager. This individual has to be a specialist in cyber security. This is a individual who has relevant knowledge. This is a very good position for system administration or network administrator that understand very well what is happening in the systems. Of course, there is they need internal or external audit. This slide shows our vision, our approach, and I'll try to explain why we've opted for this approach. In the center, we have our information, which is attached by three components. This is confidentiality, access. So three characteristics, minimum three characteristics of the information shall be assessed. We can assess even 50, but minimum three characteristics are needed. First, confidentiality, inviolability, and accessibility. So confidentiality means who has to have access to information. If I own the information and Irakli needs this information, I am saying that Irakli shall have access to this information, and I shall try to protect this confidentiality. Wholeness of the information, inviolability of the information means that the parameter I gave to Irakli is correct. For example, if I deliver the bank account number, it shall be correct. And accessibility means that when Irakli requests information from me and he needs it in 1 hour, I shall deliver him it in 1 hour. And we have 11 topics that you see on the slide, and so this is supported to help us protect the information. For example, human resource management. Do we need human resource management in information security? Yes, of course. Why? Because human beings are also carriers of information, and these are the most expensive carriers. Second is physical security, doors security, then control on access, password management policy, incident management, business continuity management. Business continuity management, of course, it has to be considered by the security systems. Compliance with the law, contract obligation, regulatory provisions. And to put it simply, I'll tell you what approach did we used in the law. As it is new fruit for Georgia, we applied the following requirements. We have split the requirements into 3 parts and said that the organization shall put in place information security systems in 3 years. Well, we could request from organizations to do it in 1 year, but it would not have been realistic. And we request from the information that in the first year, the organization shall plan the information security implementation. First, they shall assess all risks. They shall describe existing situation. There may be some risks that are not risks in reality. Well, for example, if I'm sitting in a secret room where we carry out confidential negotiations, I would request, for example, a locker on the room. On other rooms, I may not request that. In addition, the organization on the second year shall develop a framework for the plan. Second year is the implementation. The year 3 is the monitoring and improvement. So, and making adequate changes. This has to be done by audit by the owner of the asset, by owners, and some improvements will be needed. Now, why did we choose 27,000 as a base? I saw 27,000. This is a so-called PDCA model, which fully complies with the previous slide. If you see, here we have 3 parts, but in fact it is 4 parts. First, introduction, the plan, do, check, act. There are 4 stages in this model.
But the last part will be implemented in the last year. So the last part, but there are 4 parts, but the last 1. So, and we have the permanent chance to improve everything. If something was wrong for the first year, so we have this chance to improve it next year. And this model is compatible with the best practices, and it's one of the foundation stone with this respect. So what trends do we have in the agency, data exchange agency? The first, so we collaborate with 39 organizations. So we inspect the information, we conduct consultations, we consult them, we advise them, and how. At this stage, how it happens, they send some documents to us, and we check these documents, whether they are in compliance with the law or not, whether the scope is rightly selected, whether the information security system is well selected or not, should it cover the financial department and the drivers, both, or one of them, for example. And we support this 39 organizations. There are 2 projects of introduction of the information security policy in the public register's office. And we also update the legislative base, because this cycle of permanent improvement is used by us and is applied to ourselves as well, because everything changes, people change, the environment changes, and we'll have to adapt to the ever permanently changing reality. And so it means that we update the law. We have the training courses in the information security field. About 200 people have been trained for the, and this, of course, for the subjects of critical security. These training courses are free of charge, not for all the employees, but for the employees who work on the information security. And the NATO SPS, within the framework of the NATO SPS programs, we have trained a lot of employees and from Afghanistan, Montenegro, other countries as well, and the audit of the information system. Of course, if we introduce it, we understand what it means, and if anybody says to inspect the information security system, we can conduct this activity. These are the competence of the agency. We had good experience in this field, so we are very humble. So that's what we say. As for the BSI, we are the leaders, auditors of BSI system. It's business continuity standards. We are leaders of introducing business standards. In 9001, we have certified auditors as well, and the auditor in the BSI is the highest type of certification. 4 members of our team are the ISACA certificates. They are managers, and 2 of them have the certificates in auditing the information system. Our competences. What is the data exchange agency? It's so we advise on information security, pre and post implementation review. We conduct these activities: pre-audits, post-audits, and information security compliance review. We conduct audit on law and the standards, and we will always support you. Thank you very much for your attention. Do you have any questions? Thank you very much. If you have any questions, so please.
Can I ask English or Russian? Which one is better for you?
No problem.
No problem, okay. Question is the following. You were definitely describing a great story about people as the biggest factor of security in general. Then you had a little bit on the diagram about the human resource factors. But in your plan, I didn't see much about, say, something like identity governance or, working with controlling of access and working in general of identity governance story. Can you comment more about that? Because I didn't hear it on the story. Thank you.
Irakli will answer your question.
Yeah, generally we are not working for, as I understood your question, so if we will be working for whole government about access control and these kinds of things, yes? Or
Well, not only government, but everybody who is related to the data exchange. I mean, as I understand, there are other people outside of government who would access this data too, like contractors or anybody else who's working with the government. Is that true?
So what's your question again?
The question is that the human resource factor, which is you mentioned right in this diagram.
Yes.
I didn't see later that you addressed it in one of your plans of how you're gonna.
Okay, we are not working, we are not advised, and we are not creating like one unified policy for whole government or whole country. We are trying to implement information security policy, which means each organization have to identify information active, what is existing in the organization, identify risk related to these actives, and make appropriate investment to protect their actives. So this means each organization have different risks, value for actives, it's different for each organization, and we have to decide what to invest, how to protect their information actives. This is our approach. We not try to put like centralized policy for, let's say, human resource or access control and like this.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Following your question, I would like to continue a bit. In human resources, we have quite a bunch of controls which organization is required to implement for the scope within the ISMS. So we have mandatory controls which have to be implemented in the organization, but it doesn't mean, of course, you understand it, absolute security. You cannot get 100% security in any area, whether it will be human resource, whether it will be physical security, whether it will be access control, in any area. You can get just a reasonable security which you are willing to spend the budget to. Thank you. Կիտղები գիտեր որ թուգակ թույն մեզ։ Կիվատ անող թոտ։ Այ միկրոփոն։
Իրորեքսե
Իսկ կითხვა თუ შეიძლება։
If you, please, if you have a question. From my part, it's not a reproach or reprimand, but for me, it's very difficult to listen only. But I think it's due to my age. I'm listening to you. It would have been better if we had had some written slides or written documents. Please, do you have a question? Please ask a question. The presenter mentioned the following, and I'm going to quote him. It's not the strategy of cybersecurity, it's the strategy of information security. And then I couldn't understand what you meant. So it would be, could you deliberate on this topic? I'll ask Dato to discuss it with you during the break. Thank you very much for your question. Georgi Sopromadze has questions. Good morning. I represent the company Hewlett-Packard in Georgia. Cybersecurity and personal data exchange is the greatest challenge in the 21st century, one of the greatest challenges, and I'll talk on one of the components. It's the topic of backdoors, and you emphasized it in your presentation. If you remember, we conducted a seminar along with the British standards, along with this company, and the representative of the British standards emphasized that there is a list of companies, but I won't name these companies. There is a list of companies that are disclosed due to their backdoors, and they are prohibited to sell some products. Do you think that it should be introduced or might be introduced in our country to have the list of companies that violate some rules? In Georgia, we don't have a list of such companies, or we don't have the relevant law, and nobody makes an attempt of compiling such a list because Georgia doesn't have this opportunity, doesn't have this internal resources to identify such companies. So agree, we need a lot of investments. The only thing is so I think that every organization in the world has backdoors, and every product might have a backdoor all over the world. So the countries should pay attention themselves to the special organizations, to the recommendations issued by the special organizations in different countries, to the recommendations with regard to the use of some countries. So the country like Georgia should read these recommendations issued somewhere abroad in other countries and pay attention to that and try to apply maybe these recommendations in Georgian reality. Do you have any other questions? If you don't have, if you do have questions, Mr. David is here and you can talk with him during the break.